What happens when a man who has lost everything faces the impossible choice between his pride and his children's survival? This is the story of Ethan "Dusty" Hayes, a widowed cowboy struggling to keep 4 hungry children alive on a drought-stricken ranch in the heart of Texas. With his last dollar spent and his hope as dry as the cracked earth beneath his boots, Dusty was ready to surrender to despair. But sometimes salvation comes not as a miracle from above, but as a stranger on horseback carrying bread, water, and something even more precious: the reminder that humanity still exists in this harsh world. But before we begin, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us where you're listening from. The sun beat down mercilessly on the Hayes Ranch, turning the once fertile Texas soil into a cracked mosaic of broken dreams. Ethan "Dusty" Hayes stood on the sagging porch of his weathered farmhouse, surveying the devastation that had become his life. The pastures that had once been green with grass now stretched before him like a brown canvas painted with failure. Dusty was 32 years old, but the past 18 months had aged him a decade. His lean frame, once strong from years of honest ranch work, now carried the gaunt look of a man who gave his last bite of food to his children and went to bed hungry. His dark hair, prematurely streaked with gray, hung limply beneath his worn Stetson. Behind him, through the thin walls of the house, he could hear the sounds that haunted his dreams: 4-year-old Lucy whimpering softly, 8-year-old Tommy trying to comfort her, 6-year-old Sarah asking when Mama was coming home, and 10-year-old Ben attempting to keep his siblings quiet. 18 months ago, this had been a different place entirely. Mary had been alive, humming while hanging laundry, and the children had been playing in the yard. The ranch had been thriving, not wealthy, but comfortable. Then came the fever that swept through the county. Mary had caught it while nursing sick children in town. 3 days of fever and delirium, and then Mary was gone, leaving Dusty with 4 children and a heart so broken he sometimes wondered how it kept beating. The drought had come next, as if the land itself was mourning. Week after week without rain, the grass withering, the cattle dying, until Dusty had been forced to sell the survivors for whatever he could get. The money had run out 2 weeks ago. "Papa!" Ben's voice came from behind him, quiet and careful. Dusty turned, forcing his face into what he hoped was a reassuring expression. Ben stood in the doorway, his clothes hanging loose on his thin frame. "What is it, son?" "Lucy's asking for breakfast again. I told her we'd eat later, but—" Ben's voice trailed off. They both knew there was no later. The last of the flour had been used yesterday. Dusty knelt down to Ben's level. "I know, Ben. I'm working on it." "Are we going to be okay, Papa?" The question hung in the air like a challenge Dusty couldn't meet. "How do you tell your 10-year-old son that you failed?" "We're going to figure something out," Dusty said finally, the words tasting like ash. Ben nodded and went back inside. Dusty heard him telling his siblings that Papa was taking care of everything. The faith in his son's voice was like a knife to his heart. From inside the house came Lucy's voice, high and plaintive. "I'm hungry, Tommy. When can we eat?" Dusty buried his face in his hands. This was rock bottom. This was the moment when a man had to choose between his pride and his children's lives. As he turned to go inside and make the hardest decision of his life, a movement on the horizon caught his eye. A rider was approaching, too far away to make out clearly, but moving steadily toward the ranch. He squinted against the sun, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The figure was riding a dark horse and appeared to be carrying packages. As the rider drew closer, Dusty realized with surprise that it was a woman. She sat her horse with easy confidence, and even from a distance, he could see she was carrying what looked like saddlebags bulging with supplies. The woman pulled up about 20 feet from where Dusty stood. She was younger than he'd expected, probably in her late 20s, with kind brown eyes and a face that spoke of both strength and compassion. But it was what she carried that took his breath away. Strapped to her saddle were bundles that looked like bread, and the smell that reached him on the wind was unmistakably that of fresh baking. "You'd be Ethan Hayes," she said, her voice carrying a slight accent. It wasn't a question. "Yes, ma'am," Dusty replied, his voice rough. "I'm afraid you have me at a disadvantage." The woman swung down from her horse with fluid grace. "My name is Elena Rodriguez. I was passing through the county and heard in town that you might be in need of some help. Dusty's pride flared up immediately. I don't take charity, ma'am. My family and we get by just fine. Elena's eyes took in his gaunt appearance, the run-down state of the ranch, the desperation he was trying so hard to hide. Mr. Hayes, she said gently, when was the last time your children had a proper meal? The question hit him like a physical blow. From inside the house came Lucy's voice again, weaker now. Papa, my tummy hurts. Dusty's composure crumbled completely. 3 days, he whispered. They had the last of our food 3 days ago. Elena's expression softened, and she reached out to touch his arm gently. Then let's get them fed, shall we? Elena moved with practiced efficiency, unloading her supplies, while Dusty stood frozen in a mixture of gratitude and shame. The bread was still warm, wrapped in clean white cloth, and the smell made his mouth water despite his efforts to maintain dignity. Children, Elena called toward the house. Would you like to come out and meet me? I've brought something for you. The door creaked open, and Ben appeared first, his protective instincts making him cautious. Behind him clustered the other three, Tommy, Sarah clutching a worn rag doll, and little Lucy barely visible behind her siblings. Elena knelt down to their level, her smile radiant. Hello, little ones. My name is Elena. I've brought you some fresh bread and jam. Are you hungry? Lucy stepped forward first, her 4-year-old pragmatism overriding shyness. Yes, ma'am. I'm very hungry. We haven't eaten in forever. There's no shame in being hungry, sweetheart, Elena said warmly. She looked up at Dusty. Mr. Hayes, would it be all right if I prepared a meal for your family? Dusty wanted to refuse, but then Lucy swayed slightly on her feet, weakened by hunger, and his resolve crumbled. Yes, thank you. Inside the house, Elena worked with practiced ease, slicing thick pieces of bread and spreading them with jam while heating milk over the fire. She moved around Mary's kitchen without presumption, asking permission before opening cabinets. Now then, she said, setting plates before each child, I want you to eat slowly. Your stomachs need time to remember how to handle food. Dusty watched his children's faces as they bit into the bread. Lucy actually moaned with pleasure, tears of relief rolling down her cheeks. Tommy devoured his portion with desperate efficiency, while Sarah nibbled delicately. Ben tried to maintain composure, but Dusty could see the boy's hands shaking. Eat, Elena said gently to Dusty, holding out a plate. The bread was unlike anything Dusty had tasted in months, soft, fresh, with slight sweetness. As he ate, he felt strength returning to his body and clarity to his mind. Where did you come from? He asked. I was traveling through from New Mexico. I stopped in town for supplies and heard from Mrs. Patterson about your situation. Mrs. Patterson, the same woman Mary had died helping. Dusty felt a complex mix of emotions at the name. I don't understand. You're a stranger. Why would you help us? Elena was quiet for a moment. Let's just say I know what it's like to be alone and struggling. Sometimes the kindness of strangers is the only thing that stands between survival and something worse. There was pain in her voice, old and carefully controlled. As the children finished their meal, their energy began to return visibly. Lucy climbed onto Elena's lap with easy trust, while Tommy and Sarah peppered her with questions. Ben remained watchful but less guarded. Miss Elena, Lucy said, snuggling against her shoulder, are you going to stay with us? Elena looked over Lucy's head at Dusty. I wasn't planning on it, sweetheart. But we need you, Sarah said with 6-year-old directness. Papa tries real hard, but he's sad all the time since Mama went to heaven. Your papa loves you very much, Elena told Sarah. Sometimes when people are sad, they need time to figure things out. Could you help him figure things out? Tommy asked hopefully. As evening approached, Elena showed no signs of leaving. She helped the children wash up, listened to their stories, and even sang them a lullaby in Spanish. For the first time in months, they went to bed with full stomachs and genuine smiles. When the children were asleep, Dusty and Elena sat on the porch in companionable silence. I can't pay you, Dusty said finally. I don't have anything left. I didn't ask for payment, Elena replied calmly. Then what do you want? Elena was quiet for so long that Dusty thought she might not answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft and filled with old pain. 2 years ago, I was in a situation not unlike yours. Different circumstances, but the same desperation. A stranger helped me when I had nowhere else to turn. I promised myself that if I ever had the opportunity to pay that kindness forward, I would. What happened? My husband was killed in a mining accident. Left me with debts I couldn't pay, and people who thought a woman alone was easy prey. I had to leave everything behind and start over. I'm sorry. The point is, I understand what it's like to feel like you failed the people you love. But accepting help doesn't make you a failure, Mr. Hayes. It makes you a father who puts his children's needs above his pride. Elena stood up. I should check on my horse, and I suppose I should find somewhere to camp for the night. You could stay, Dusty found himself saying. In the barn. It's not much, but it's shelter. Elena smiled. That's very kind. I accept. As she walked toward the barn, Dusty remained on the porch, staring up at the stars. For the first time in 18 months, he felt something beside despair. It wasn't exactly hope, not yet, but it was the absence of hopelessness. Inside the house, his children slept peacefully, their bellies full and their spirits lifted by the kindness of a stranger. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, Dusty Hayes allowed himself to believe that maybe they were going to be all right. Dusty woke before dawn to the sound of movement outside. Elena was tending to a small fire and what appeared to be breakfast preparations. Her horse was grazing peacefully nearby. Good morning, Elena said, looking up with a smile. I hope you don't mind. I found some eggs in your hen house and had bacon in my supplies. You don't have to do this, he said, though the smell of the food was making his mouth water. I know I don't have to, but I want to. As they ate, Dusty found himself studying Elena more carefully. She had an easy way with the children, but there was something else, a competence that suggested she was more than just a kind-hearted traveler. After breakfast, Elena surprised Dusty by examining their water supply, assessing the vegetable garden, and looking over their few chickens. Mr. Hayes, she said, finding him by the empty corral. May I speak frankly? I reckon you've earned that right. You have good land here, even with the drought. The bones of a successful ranch are still here. You just need help getting back on your feet. Dusty laughed bitterly. I'm behind on the mortgage. I have no cattle, no seed money, and winter's coming. What if you did have the means? Elena asked quietly. What do you mean? I have resources, and I've been looking for the right opportunity to invest them in people like you. Good people who've hit hard times through no fault of their own. I told you, I don't take charity. This wouldn't be charity. It would be a business arrangement, a partnership. Despite his suspicions, Dusty found himself curious. What kind of partnership? I provide the capital to get your ranch operational again, cattle, supplies, payment to bring your mortgage current. In return, you provide the labor and expertise. We split the profits. Dusty stared at her in disbelief. You're talking about a significant amount of money. Why would you trust me? Because I've seen how you love your children. A man who would consider giving up his children rather than let them starve is a man with integrity. You don't know if I'm capable of making a ranch profitable. Mrs. Patterson spoke highly of your character, and I've seen your land. With proper investment and hard work, this could be a thriving operation again. Where does someone like you get that kind of money? Elena's expression grew carefully neutral. I inherited it. My husband left me well provided for. I've been looking for worthwhile ways to use it. Even if I agreed, what would happen to you? Would you stay here? That would depend on whether you wanted me to stay. The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications neither was ready to address directly. The children have taken a shine to you, Dusty said finally. And I to them. They're wonderful kids, Mr. Hayes. Mary raised them well. That afternoon, Elena asked Dusty to show her around the property. As they walked, she asked intelligent questions about ranching operations, the local cattle market, and drought challenges. You know a lot about ranching for someone who's just an investor, Dusty observed. I grew up on a ranch in New Mexico. Before I married, I worked alongside my father for years. As the sun began to set, they returned to find the children playing in the yard, really playing, with energy and laughter, for the first time in months. They look like children again, Dusty said wonderingly. Children are resilient. They just need security and love. That evening, after the children were in bed, they sat on the porch again. I need to ask you something, Dusty said. Are you running from something? Elena was quiet for a long time. I was. But I don't think I am anymore. What changed? I found something worth staying for. The weight of her words settled between them, like a bridge neither was quite ready to cross. But for the first time since Mary's death, Dusty felt the stirring of possibility. If we do this, if we become partners, what are the terms? Equal partnership in profits after expenses. I provide initial capital. You provide labor and management. Decisions made jointly. And I'd like to stay here, help with the children and the household, if that's acceptable. As what? A business partner? Hey, as whatever you're comfortable with. I'm not trying to replace your wife, Mr. Hayes. But your children need stability, and frankly, so do you. Dusty extended his hand. Partners, then. Elena shook it firmly. Partners. As they shook hands, both knew they were agreeing to more than just a business arrangement. They were choosing to build something new from the ashes of their separate losses, something that honored the past, while embracing the possibility of a future. For the first time in 18 months, Dusty Hayes went to bed with hope in his heart and a plan for tomorrow. 6 months later, the Hayes ranch was unrecognizable. The pastures, green again after blessed rains, held 40 head of healthy cattle. The vegetable garden flourished under Elena's care, and the children's laughter once again echoed across the land. Dusty stood on the same porch where he'd contemplated surrender, but everything had changed. The house had been repaired and painted, with a new roof and sparkling windows. But the most profound changes weren't visible from the outside. Papa, look what Miss Elena taught me. Lucy came running with arms full of flowers from Elena's garden. At 5 now, she was plump and rosy-cheeked, no longer the hollow-eyed waif who had asked for food with desperate eyes. They're beautiful, sweetheart, Dusty said, lifting her up. Lucy smelled like sunshine and soap and childhood, scents that had been absent too long. The transformation in all 4 children was remarkable. Ben had grown 3 inches and carried himself with new confidence. Tommy had discovered a talent for fishing. Sarah had overcome her shyness and bloomed into a capable helper. And Lucy had simply returned to being the happy child she'd been before tragedy struck. Dusty found Elena in the kitchen, kneading dough with practiced hands, her face flushed from the oven's heat. She wore a simple blue dress covered by one of Mary's aprons, and the sight filled him with contentment he'd never expected to feel again. "Smells like heaven in here," he said. Elena looked up with the warm smile that had become as familiar as sunrise. "I'm trying a new recipe." Their partnership had worked exactly as promised. The ranch was not only solvent, but turning a profit. More than that, Elena had proven invaluable in ways beyond financial investment. She'd taken over household management with quiet efficiency, taught the children skills Mary would have taught them, and somehow managed to honor Mary's memory while creating new traditions. "The cattle look good," Dusty reported. "Johnson wants to buy 10 head for breeding stock. Premium price." "That's wonderful," Elena said, her face lighting up with genuine pleasure. "We've done amazing work," Dusty said. "I couldn't have managed any of this without you." Elena's cheeks pinked at the compliment. Their relationship had evolved slowly over the months, built on mutual respect and shared responsibility rather than passion. It was different from what he'd had with Mary, less intense, perhaps, but deeper in some ways. "Dusty," Elena said, her voice taking on a serious tone, "I received a letter yesterday." Something in her expression made him tense. "What kind of letter?" Elena pulled a folded paper from her pocket. "From my late husband's business partner in New Mexico. There was some property I wasn't aware of, some investments that have finally paid out. It's a substantial amount of money, enough to change things significantly." Dusty felt a chill of premonition. "What do you mean?" "I mean I don't need to be here anymore. Financially, I mean. I could go anywhere, do anything. I'm completely independent now. The words hit Dusty like a physical blow. So you'll be moving on then? That depends. On what? On whether you want me to stay. The question hung between them like a bridge he wasn't sure he was ready to cross. The children would be devastated if you left, he said finally. And what about you? Elena asked quietly. Would you be devastated? Elena, this is complicated. I know it is. I'm not asking you to forget Mary. I would never ask that. I'm asking if you think we could build something real together. Not a replacement for what you lost, but something new. Dusty looked down at their joined hands. I care about you. More than I expected to care about anyone again. But I don't know if I can love you the way you deserve. And I don't know if I can love anyone the way I loved my first husband, Elena replied honestly. But maybe this is about building something different. A partnership that's deeper than business. A family that's chosen. A love that's quiet and steady rather than passionate and consuming. From outside came the children's voices, calling for them to see something exciting. The sounds of a family at peace. They need you, Dusty said quietly. They need both of us. And I think we need each other too. If you stay, it would have to be permanent. The children have already lost one mother. I won't let them get attached and then lose you too. I understand. I wouldn't stay unless I was committed to staying forever. Dusty lifted their joined hands and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. Then stay. Stay and help me build something good here. Elena's smile was radiant. I will. 3 months later, on a crisp autumn morning, Dusty Hayes married Elena Rodriguez in a simple ceremony in their front yard. The children served as witnesses, their faces glowing as they watched their father and the woman, who had become their second mother, promise to love and honor each other. It wasn't passionate romance, but it was something perhaps more valuable, a love built on respect, partnership, and shared commitment. Elena wore a simple blue dress and carried wildflowers. Dusty wore his best suit and a smile that reached his eyes for the first time since Mary's death. After the ceremony, as they celebrated with neighbors and friends, Dusty found a quiet moment to stand with Elena on the porch where he'd once contemplated the end of everything. Any regrets? He asked, putting his arm around his new wife. Elena leaned into him, solid and warm and real. None. This is exactly where I meant to be. Looking out over the thriving ranch, watching his children play with easy confidence, Dusty had to agree. This wasn't the life he'd planned, but it was a good life, built from the ashes of loss and watered with tears of strangers who had chosen to become family. Sometimes salvation really did come on horseback, carrying bread and hope and the promise that even the most broken things could be made whole again. 5 years later, the Hayes Ranch was one of the most successful in the county. But their greatest success was visible every morning at the breakfast table, for thriving children who called Elena Mama Elena and treated her with love and respect. Standing on the porch one evening, watching Elena teach Lucy to play guitar while the boys worked with the horses, Dusty reflected on the journey that had brought them here. He still missed Mary, would always miss her, but the sharp edge of grief had softened into gratitude. Elena had never tried to replace Mary, but she'd carved out her own place in their hearts, different but equally important, equally loved. She'd kept her promise to stay, to build something lasting, to be the anchor their family needed. Sometimes, late at night, Dusty would remember that morning when he'd thought about giving up his children, about surrendering to despair. He'd remember how empty the future had looked, how impossible it had seemed that things could ever be good again. And then he'd listen to the sounds of his house, Elena's soft breathing, the children sleeping peacefully, the ranch animals settling for the night, and he'd marvel at how wrong he'd been about the possibilities that existed even in the darkest moments. Hope really could ride in on horseback, carrying bread and water and the promise of new beginnings. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, it stayed forever. If you like this story, leave your opinion in the comments and, of course, leave a like and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Big hug and see you soon.